Hey there folks, Bob Yeager here. So I was told that for Prepping 101 this week, I gotta create a video for the newsletter on learning skills. I'm sure you guys read James Bender's newsletter from Tuesday about the skills challenge. So I'm gonna teach you how to learn anything. Now, I gotta give you some context, so I hope you stick with me through this video. Not everything I'm gonna talk about is emergency preparedness, but that doesn't matter because you can apply this to anything in your life. For you young folks, you can apply it to college, to school. I used it to get all A's in physics and mechanical engineering and get my master's degrees in three different topics, three different subjects. And I used it to learn how to play any instrument I want to play on huge stages, go on tours with bands, play for the Pittsburgh Symphony, and many, many other things. So I'm going to teach you how to learn anything today. Problem is with learning is people treat it like you have to crunch, you have to study for multiple hours on end and everything. And actually, that's not the way your brain works. See, your brain can only take in about 19 minutes of information at a time, and then it takes 9 minutes for your brain to actually process the information and store it, okay? So what usually happens is when people go to school and they study, it looks something like this. Here's hour 0, and we're gonna do a 2-hour crunch study, right? So what a lot of people don't realize is most of the things that we learn and when we're practicing or learning, we remember the first and last thing that we learned. And that stuff in between starts to get a bit jumbled up because there's so much distance in between. So you'll remember this, the first thing you studied, and then you'll remember this, the last thing you studied. Well, I say just separate it out. So what I like to do is I go, say 19 minutes and then 9, and then I go 19 minutes and then 9, and then I go 19 minutes and 9. I know this seems monotonous, but I'm going to teach you a way to use this to your advantage, okay? So I go through here where I'm going to separate this out into equal segments all the way across the 2-hour period. And I'm going to have 19 minutes of study time, then 9 minutes of downtime. That downtime, when I'm learning something, is literally no listening to podcasts, no listening to music, take a walk, get a drink of water, maybe grab a snack. Don't take in any other information, okay? So 19 minutes of reading, learning, watching a YouTube video, whatever it may be. 9 minutes, just shut it all off, shut everything off. Don't let your mind take anything else in and just sit and just think about what you just studied, okay? But here's the most critical part. So what we've done there actually is, so instead of having this big distance in between things we've learned, we have first thing we learn, last thing we learn, take a break. Let our brains process the information. Then first thing we learn, last thing we learn within a 19-minute segment. Then take 9 minutes, let your brain process the information. We've decreased the amount of distance between the first and last thing we learn on each segment that we do, okay? The next thing is you actually have to attach meaning to something you learn. See all these drums back here? So that big one back there, which you might be able to see, but that's like a 15-piece drum set back there. This is the original drum set I used to record on. It's a professional stage tour kit. This is what back in the 80s and 90s you would have took on tour through Europe and all around the United States and everything. This smaller set is what all the kids are using today. And this is my son's set. He's 16 years old. And he would much rather have this kit than that kit. That kit you can play anything you want on, any style of music. You have to look at it in different ways. So when I started playing, I was 6 years old and I had a snare drum and a pair of sticks and a little music book. And they told me to go through the book and learn how to play the things, okay? That didn't work well for me because I was just kind of like, well, I want to play it now, right? I want to hit the drum. So I had an uncle who played drums, and he goes, here, learn these 5 things. And they were just basically the fundamentals and rudiments, okay? And he goes, if you can master those, if you can get really good at those, practice for about 30, 45 minutes a day, you'll be fine. You can play any song that you want to. When I was in a band, I was in a rock band for the first time when I was about 19 years old or something like that. My guitarist was amazing at playing the guitar. He could play classical, he could play all kinds of different things. And I said, I want to learn how to play classical music, classical guitar. And he showed me a basic 5 to 7 chords to play. And he said, you can play any song with those. So I learned how to play guitar. But I didn't take years to learn how to play these things. Like the first time I sat behind a drum kit, I was in 7th grade of middle school, junior high school. And my music teacher came to me and said, hey, we need a drummer for our stage band, not just for symphony band. Would you like to play the drum kit? And I said, I've never played one before. He goes, it's super simple. Let me teach you how to play a song. So he sat behind the drum kit. He played the song. And then he had me sit behind the drum kit and play the song. There was no long process to the learning. But for me, it had meaning to it. My family loved music. There was a lot of people that played and sang music in my family. There was music in the house all the time. And I knew music meant a lot to my mom and dad. And, well, what kid doesn't want attention from their mom and dad, right? And my parents were great, but when you could play music or you could draw or you could paint, they were just amazed by it, right? So also when I was a little kid, I learned how to draw. My grandmother taught me how to draw, then my mom taught me how to draw. I had an uncle and a cousin that knew how to draw, and they taught me stuff. Then my art teacher at school knew I really loved it and I was getting good at it, so she taught me more advanced stuff. Than I had this other art teacher who taught at a university, and he taught me stuff. And then they gave me a bunch of books on learning all the fundamentals of anatomy and all these different things, and I learned it. And then when I was 17 years old, still in high school, moved out on my own, owned a business, had a job, and went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh at the same exact time. I was constantly moving, constantly doing stuff, but it didn't take me years to learn how to draw. It took me like a week. It didn't take me years to learn how to paint. It took like a week. Now, to get really good at it, sure, it took me longer, okay? But you can learn anything, and actually you don't need, the problem is you go back, and there's a Seth Godin book, I think it was Seth Godin, and he was talking about how it took 20 hours to get, or I'm sorry, it took 10,000 hours to get good at anything. That's actually not true, and that's not exactly the way it was written. Years ago, there was an academic study done, and they found that top performing athletes around the world took an average of 10,000 hours to get to the point where they were world competitors. That meant 5 years of a full-time job, basically, okay, to master the skill. When I was young and I was in the martial arts and I did a lot of tournaments, they told me it took 10,000 hours to master the martial arts, okay? So it wasn't 10,000 hours to learn something. It wasn't 10,000 hours to get good at something. It was 10,000 hours to master it, to become elite, okay? And then the internet comes along and they said, a bunch of internet marketers says it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. That's not true either. And then some people said it takes 10,000 hours to learn a skill. It's been misinterpreted so many times. It actually only takes about 20 hours to learn a skill, okay? But you don't learn a skill the same way you learn information, okay? So I might, instead of getting every book I could possibly find on a topic, I'll give you an example. When I was 14 years old, I was approached by Henry Hillman. He was Andrew Carnegie's cousin. He created PNC Bank. He used to own U.S. Steel. I lived in Pittsburgh. And he noticed I worked at a flower shop. He noticed that I had good salesmanship skill, and I wrote all the copy, all the ad copy for the flower shop and stuff, because I loved to write. It was another form of art. Notice drawing, painting, music, writing. I was an artist, right? And I loved every form of those things. And he said, you know, you're a pretty good copywriter. I said, I don't know what that is. And he explained it to me, right? So I didn't need to know what copywriting was in order to write good copy, okay? And I wrote good copy, not great. He goes, I'll pay you to write copy for our nonprofit. I said, actually, if you could teach me about business, I won't charge you anything to write copy for your nonprofit. And we made a deal, and we had a lifelong friendship until he passed away at like 98 years old. But what Henry was teaching me was that, you know, instead of going out and getting every single book you could find at that time, because we didn't have the internet with all the information on it at that time, to learn how to become an amazing copywriter, just get 2 or 3 books from like some of the best sources you could get. And at the time, there was Claude Hopkins, Eugene Schwartz, and a couple others. So I got a Claude Hopkins book, I got Eugene Schwartz, I think Scientific Advertising, and I got another one, I can't remember. Actually, it was What to Say When We Talk to Ourselves by Shad Helmstetter. It was not a copywriting book. It was a personal development book about inner monologue. And I figured, well, if I could speak to people, whether it's on stage, through a camera, writing copy, then I have to speak to their inner conversation. I have to meet them where the conversation already is in their head, because Eugene Schwartz said so in his book, okay? So I wanted to learn how to do that. And then the process of doing it, I read those 3 books, I took studious notes, and then instead of continuing to try to figure out what they were talking about and learning more from another author and this stuff, all I did was every time an ad would come in the mail, I'd write it. And I try to figure out what was this writer trying to achieve through the headline, the subhead, the body, and the bullet points and things like that. I started to learn what the words meant. I started to realize why they arranged a copy in a certain way to be effective. I did the same thing in music. Instead of studying more books and taking more classes and more lessons, I started just going out and getting the sheet music for the music, and I tried to figure out how they composed it and how they put it together and how they constructed it. And I quickly realized it was all fundamentals, and most songs follow the same structure. So it became very easy for me to write and record music. When my son was young, he was probably about 10 years old, and he said, "Daddy, I want to learn how to play drums." And it wasn't because of me. I hadn't had a drum kit in the house since he was born. So he'd never seen me do it, okay? He heard me talk about it, but he'd never seen me do it. But he was really interested in it. So the first thing I did was I got him a pair of drumsticks like my mom and dad got for me. And in school, I told him, go in band. He didn't like it. It was just one drum and they were just doing this, right? Most school music teachers don't know how to teach people how to play this. They have to teach people how to play this, just this one thing, okay? And they usually teach from a book. A lot of band teachers in public schools and things, and some of you are band teachers, I'm sure, but you learn your instrument pretty well, and you learn some of the other instruments too, but this whole setup is very intricate, very expensive, and it gets more expensive the more you do it. You may think these things last forever, but they're consumable. They crack, they break. You have to get new ones and things, and they're very expensive. So most people don't go to the extent that I went through to learn how to become an expert at playing these things, right? So what I did was I bought my son a used kit, which I still have right over here. I bought it for him when he was 10 years old, and I bought it for about $400. But it was a good kit. It was quality, okay? And I taught him first how to play one song. And that song had all the fundamentals in it. That song you all may be familiar with is Wipeout. Why did I choose that song? It seems difficult, but it's really not once you learn how to do it. I chose that song because it's fun, it's fast, it's loud, and he was a 10-year-old little boy. That's what he wanted to learn how to do. Once he went through the week, I told him, okay, if you practice this song for 45 minutes a day over the next month, just this one song for 45 minutes a day over the next month, I'll get you a real drum kit. After I teach you how to make this one sound like a professional one, because you can do that with any drum kit, really. 45 minutes a day for a month, he played Wipeout. Still to this day, 6 years later, he is killer at that song, okay? This is the first one he ever learned how to play. And I actually played it for the first time in front of an audience last year, an older audience, and they were just blown away. Even the band that he was playing with was a bunch of older guys, and they were blown away by it. But then I showed him how to take that inexpensive drum kit and make it sound really good by adding some nylon washers and adjusting the hardware and putting different drum heads, more quality drum heads and hardware on it and things. And then I taught him how to tune it properly. Not being all a stickler about is it at this note? No, make sure it's tuned properly, right? And once he got through that, he actually played on that kit for about 3 or 4 years. Then I went out and bought myself a Pearl Export series because it was one of my favorite drum kits from the 80s and 90s. And I wanted an 80s Pearl Export series, so I bought that. And he started playing on that kit too. Then he was playing with a big band in our local town. He was about 12 years old. And I bought him another kit that was about a 4-piece kit, and I bought it for like $80. That was a cheapo piece of crap kit. But he had already learned. So he made it sound like a professional big band kit, right? He mastered knowing how to tweak and fine tune his tool. He learned how to hone it, right? So from the learning process of shorten the period of time in between learning, right? So instead of 2 hours straight, that's whether you're studying for school, a test, a final exam, whatever it may be, or just learning how to do bushcraft and wilderness things and stuff. Instead of learning for 2 hours straight, studying for 2 hours straight, study for 19 minutes, 9-minute break. 19 minutes, 9-minute break, right? So that's about 30-minute segments, and how many of those are in 2 hours? 4, right? And I'm going to take those 4 segments and break them into 2 pieces, a 9-minute segment and a 19-minute segment. So now I have 8 segments, right? But I only really have 4 that I'm learning in. The rest I'm letting my brain process the information, okay? And that's really important to learn any new skill. So it starts with how to learn properly. Then it goes to attach meaning to it. What does it mean to you to learn that thing? Why is that important to you? When I was learning to do internet marketing and things like that, like building websites and blogs and all these podcasts and many different things that I do, it was because I write, and it's because I do art, and it's because I wanted to share expertise and skills and things. And I wanted to do it in the best way I possibly could at the highest quality I could. But what a lot of people don't know is I wasn't doing it for you. I was doing it for my kids. My daughter was just a baby at the time. My son wasn't even born yet. I was doing it so when I created things that had an evergreen nature to it, meaning it could stand the test of time and learning, I was thinking about my kids in the future. Man, I wish I had this information when I was coming up. Well, I want to be able to archive this so they have it. So it wasn't for you, it was for them, okay? And then all of a sudden people started asking me to create more of it, so it became for you and for them, all right? But I didn't know how to code, I didn't know how to build websites or anything, so I just sat down. I read a couple books, I read a couple blogs. I think at the time I read a couple e-zines or something like that. And then I called a guy that I knew did that stuff. And I said, hey, what's the quickest, fastest, highest quality way to do this without breaking the bank? And he told me. So I just sat down and did it. And then that same guy came out with a little 5-hour course. So I bought his course for $97 and I learned how to do it even better, right? But the rest of it didn't come from learning more. It didn't come from reading another book or any of those things. So that's why I say pick 2 or 3 books on the topic you want to learn, on that skill that you want to learn. Then spend that 2-hour time period, break it down into segments, do 45 minutes a day over 30 days, attach meaning to it. But most importantly, practice. Actually, most of getting good at something or learning a skill doesn't come from the actual reading and writing part of things most of the time. It comes from a long curve of practice. So this is what learning a skill looks like. Okay, here's a graph, okay? And here's a line. Here's practice, okay? Almost at the end of the graph. You see that? Skills learned. Look how long practice is, right? So I'm going to study. I'm going to do it in the right way for my brain to learn it. I'm going to attach meaning to it. I'm going to have the right tools in front of me, right? And I'm going to spend that 45 minutes a day for 30 days practicing that skill. Before you know it, you know the skill. I showed somebody, they didn't like this at the Art Institute. I was allowed to teach these private lectures at night, and they didn't like my lectures anymore, so they made me stop doing it. I was 19 years old at the time. It was my last year there. And I was showing the general public, I was inviting them to these lectures at the Art Institute and showing them that anybody can learn how to draw. It's not an innate talent. For some people, yeah, they pick it up really quick, right? And they have an eye for it, or they kind of just have a feeling for it, right? But when you can teach somebody how to learn properly, and you can teach them how to study properly and retain information, you can teach them how to practice and get good at something, it only takes about 20 hours for them to actually be able to do that thing. And I proved that with my little girl. When she was 5 years old, I taught her how to do an acrylic painting of a snowy farm scene with a broken fence and a tree. And that was the first painting she ever did, and she was hooked at that very moment. Now she goes to Colorado, Rocky Mountain School of Art and Design in Colorado for illustration, and she's decided to make a career of this. My son plans on being a career musician. He's learning how to master and record his own stuff now, and he has an agent. He's 16. If you don't believe you can't learn any skill, you need to stop and take a step back, because I'm here to tell you that I grew up in a cemetery. No joke. My parents were cemetery caretakers. I grew up in an old farmhouse. They got to live there in exchange for maintaining the grounds, while my dad still worked a full-time job as well. We weren't rich. We didn't have money. When I was 18, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and that lasted for 8 years, and I recovered from it. How did I recover from it? I learned how to navigate the health system and doctors, and I learned how to get the treatment that I was willing to pay for. But in that period, it was so expensive to pay for those things, I had to learn how to do business and be really freaking good at it. And I figured, well, where does profit come from? Sales. Well, so I have to be good at sales. So I learned how to do sales, and I worked with Henry Hillman, Billy Mays, Jim Rohn, and many other people. I trained sales teams myself for other organizations, then I trained them for my organizations, and I kept growing things from there. I didn't know how to do any of those things. I just kept practicing. I learned, practiced, and obtained the skill, usually within 20 hours of effort. Now, did I master those skills? No, there was always something new to make me better at it. I was always looking for a way to practice more and hone my tools more. But that was the other thing. As soon as I had the skill, I knew I had to invest in the right tools. I tried cabinet making one time, traditional with hand tools and things. It wasn't going very well. My cuts were crooked, and I went to school for engineering. My cuts were crooked. The things that I would make weren't high quality, and everything would just go wrong all the time. So I'm like, you know what? I need a better, what's the basic tools I need? So I was watching Paul Sellers, a lot of you know who he is, on YouTube, and he showed me the basic tools. So I'm like, oh, okay, I don't need all this other stuff. I just need this hand plane. I need these chisels. I need this saw. And my first project, I'm going to make my own chisel mallet because I need one of those too. So why buy one when I can make one, right? So the second thing I realized was the quality of the materials I was using was horrible. So first it was the basic tools, then honing those tools because they're never really sharp out of the box, and then quality materials. So I bought small pieces of quality materials and learned those skills on small things, and then I kept working my way up. And before you knew it, I was making cabinetry that was pretty stellar. Now, I didn't want to do that as a career. I just wanted to be good enough at it so I could create things, right? I learned emergency preparedness not because I was looking to be a prepper or anything. When I was a kid, my mom and dad would can, and my dad and my pap would hunt and trap and things like that. And I wanted to learn how to do those things because I liked having good food in my house. When I had cancer, I really needed the good, clean food in my house. So I learned how to garden. I asked my dad to teach me how. I learned how to can and process food. My mom and grandmother taught me how to do that. I learned how to trap and process and hunt and process meats. My pap and my dad taught me how to do those things. But it didn't take them forever. It was like a week. They taught me how to do it, and then that was it. That was the way I was taught when I was a kid. Here, I showed you how to do it once, now go do it, right? If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but we're not going to keep doing it for you. And that was the key to the whole thing. I can ask for guidance, but once I learn how to do it, go practice it, because they're not going to do it for me. So for all you young folks out there, it's about go do it. I was out the other day, my mother-in-law's car broke, the steering knuckle, wheel bearing, everything, and I'm just like, I'm going to just replace all of it. My son's out there, and I have his car sitting right beside me. I'm like, hey, when we're done with this one, we're going to do yours, so watch what I'm doing. It's very similar, not exactly the same, but I'll be with you. He goes, okay. So we were wrenching on it, doing the thing and everything, and then it was time to do his, and he could do it just by watching, being able to replicate and duplicate the process, okay? So it's really important to realize that when you're thinking of, and once again, the emergency preparedness thing came out of, I just wanted to know how to have good food and stuff. And then I started, 9/11 happened. I lived in downtown Pittsburgh. I actually helped a crew to go to Somerset, PA when the plane crashed there because we dealt with cemeteries and stuff. And I just realized things were kind of shaky. And then 2008 happened, and I watched all my friends lose a lot of their savings and their jobs and everything. And I was already pretty independent at that point. I was about, I don't know, 31 years old or something at the time when the 2008 market crash happened. It didn't really affect me. Actually, I made more money during that time period than I had in the previous 5 years, just in that 1 year. Because I learned how to pivot a lot, and I learned how to do different things. And I learned that if this skill doesn't suit me anymore for profitability, I need to be able to switch to this other skill that I can learn pretty rapidly or I already know. And that's the key to preparedness, really. It's not about being a master at any of these skills. It's actually being about being a jack of all trades and being able to do things good enough, pretty good enough, right? Now you'll find when you're doing those things that certain thing that you have mastered. I'll give you an example. Prepping 101 wasn't something I wanted to do. It wasn't something I wanted to put together. Years ago, a bunch of business buddies of mine, they make pretty decent revenue. They were fearful about like certain events in the world and grain shortages and flooding and all these other different things. And they didn't want to learn how to be preppers. No. They just want to learn how to take care of the family when the inevitable happens, the freak winter storm, the long-term power outage, hurricane, flood, whatever it may be, being stuck in a city where something's going down, right? And they just wanted to know how to do those things. So I taught some basics, the fundamentals. And they're like, hey man, it'd be really cool if you created like a video course on this. And I'm like, I don't really want to. And they're like, we'll pay you. I'm like, okay. So I did it, and then I was doing it every year with people that own businesses for their families and stuff for the past 25 years. Didn't want to. It's just my market started telling me they wanted me to teach them that. And because I spent so many years teaching it and researching more and making it better quality and honing my craft and my skills and my knowledge and everything, that's why I created the newsletter. I'm like, I have so much information, not only in my head, but articles I've written and everything else. I'd like to share it with people. That's why the Prepping 101 newsletter, this channel. So I created Prepping 101 25 years ago. And I really wanted to make sure that people had it. Now, once again, recently somebody said, hey, could you create some Prepping 101 videos? That's why I created the YouTube channel. I don't really care to have a YouTube channel. I've had hundreds of YouTube channels over the years. Ever since YouTube first became public for everybody to use and it wasn't a dating site anymore, I've had YouTube channels. I just figured, well, what the heck? It's easy for me to share things this way. But if you want to learn a skill, it's just a matter of learning it. Don't take forever reading up on it, because what happens is when you buy a stack of books and you watch a bunch of videos and you buy a bunch of courses, guess what you're doing? You're just procrastinating. Attach an emotional connection to it, an emotional meaning. Even Elon Musk realizes that most things are learned because of emotion, not because of logic. It's an emotional thing. We want to do that because we want to be good at that thing because some emotional attachment to it, some purpose to it. So attach a purpose to it. Second, learn how to learn. Don't crunch for 2 hours straight. Learn how your brain works. 19 minutes and 9-minute break, 19 minutes and 9-minute break. Do that about 4 cycles, right? Second is 20 hours to learn anything, really. If you did it for 45 minutes a day for 30 days, you'd be right around 20 hours or so. So it's not something that's, I don't have time for it. Yeah, just don't watch that one thing on Netflix tonight and you'll be fine. Just do this instead, right? So you should be able to learn anything, and most importantly, when you can learn anything, you can teach anything as well. When you learn something, it's never for us to keep that here. It's funny, years ago somebody said to me, you know, the old adage, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for life. And it was a buddy of mine, Tim Sales, who said, teach a man to teach his children to fish. Teach a man to teach his children to fish, and you'll end world hunger. So when you learn how to learn a skill properly, then learn how to teach the skill properly, then teach your children to be able to teach the skill properly. And you'd be amazed generationally what that'll do for your family and your community. That's all I got for you today. I hope you guys, my subscribers, enjoyed this video newsletter. And that's that. Take care.